raised for any of the organizations that we benefit. So we just ask that you please reconsider, please keep in mind those of us that are nonprofit, and try our best to help Manistee and its, you know, everybody in it. That's what we're here for. We want to help people. Please keep that in mind when you guys make your final decision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
My name is Ann Badabancourt, and I'm head of the Manistee World of Arts and Crafts. You said this isn't in stone yet, but we need to know one way or the other because our applications go out this week. So that means if we don't know what we have to pay, we don't know what we have to charge the people that are going to be as exhibitors. And all the money that we cut goes back to the community. We don't keep any of it. We help with the lighthouses. We're doing with the veterans. We do everything. And we just need to know how much we're going to have to put extra out for our exhibitors to pay for this cost. And who knows if they're going to be able to even pay for it because it's getting out of hand on some of the stuff that we have to pay. So we need to know, not in a couple of weeks or anything. We need to know right away.
Understand.
Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else? Seeing none. First up, discussion on special events. Mr. Taylor.
Yes, I just wanted to discuss this with council and get some, clear direction. It was kind of up in the air whether council was going to charge or not, and if they were going to charge, to what degree they were going to charge, all the costs, a portion thereof, didn't know. I sent out letters to all the organizations that we were aware of that either held their own special event or participated in another special event, and to give them notice that we were making a couple of changes. One significant change to the special event was that we were requiring that we receive the form 90 days in advance. We had it at 30 days, and a lot of times we were getting it a week beforehand. And so we wanted as much time as we could to sit down and, with the organizations and plan and have everything in place. And then the other one was just putting them on notice that they may be charged for city services. And since the letter went out, I've had a couple of phone calls asking for clarification, and I didn't have all the answers I needed. And most of it was, are we going to get charged? And all I could tell them was that was going to be decided by council on a case-by-case basis. That was the last direction I had. So I wanted to see if we had any clarity that we could offer to these people that are asking. We've been throughout this past year. We've been we've been tracking what our costs were per event. Jeff has brought some of that information with him tonight. If you're interested in looking at that, we can share that with you, and if that helps in your decision-making process.
Okay, I'd like to hear from Jeff.
The council directed staff to come up with some sort of ability to charge back to these events. So the esteemed Chief Kozel and I have been working on that. We came up with the form that's up on the screen. Can you just kind of scroll through one of them? Basically what we did is mirrored or started with the way that Ludington does it. And you can just scroll up to the individual items. So each item that's on there, and then we went through all the different events that we support, and there's probably between 15 and 20 that we do on an annual basis. And we added some of the special ones that are unique to Manistee, such as the grills that some of us use, and hanging banners, relocating bleachers, stuff like that. A lot of the items are small dollar amounts, and really it doesn't pay for the materials itself. It pays for the labor and the time that it takes for staff to move things around, put them out, take them back. Fencing, we actually looked at the personnel we use, the equipment we use. We applied the state of Michigan chart of rates that they tell us what we can charge on an annual basis for each piece of equipment and each employee. And we based it on how much time and when we put it up. So that's really where those dollar amounts came. And then if you go to the bottom of the form, it gave, all the way to the bottom, it gave the ability for council at their direction to apply some sort of a discount rate. 0% discount means whatever that total is what that event would be responsible for. 50% obviously would cut that in half, and 100% discount would be $0 charged. So I don't know if you want to, I brought, I think, 3 or 4 different examples. Probably for the past 6 months, Chief Kozel and I have been filling out these, because this didn't go effect until January 1st of 2019, if you recall. So probably for the past 6 months, we've been actually filling them out as if the fees were to be charged, so that those events could get an idea of what would be coming up, you know, if they were charged in the future. Yeah, you can bring up, like, sleigh bell maybe. And so we were also trying to educate each of those events on what that form is and how it would be used. The other thing that we found with every one of these events is, when I filled out this form in particular, it was based on what the sleigh bell or what the DDA requested. As you get closer, things get added, things get remembered, things, you know, so there actually would need to be, we would fill this out prior to the event and when it comes to city council for consideration, but there would need to be some sort of kind of a post-event recap that, well, we added picnic tables or we added more fencing or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, just go all the way down.
Down to where there's costs. I can also tell you that I serve on quite a few of these event committees, and I've been trying for the past year to let them know that this could be coming down in the future. And then since it was enacted by council that would start January 1st, I've been trying to talk to them and get them ready for this, and it's been met with a lot of resistance.
Could you elaborate on the resistance? What was the?
A lot of it, one of the biggest meetings we had was a Forest Festival meeting. It was kind of our first one, kicking off for, you know, preparing for 2019. There was a lot of questions on, well, I don't ask for that, I don't participate in that. You know, they use this, but I don't use it, I benefit from it. Just as some of the public stated earlier, if we have to pay for it, we need to know up front, because we've got to then charge more for it. There were quite a few that said, if we've got to pay anything, you know, we may back out of this. There was also concern over how council would apply the discounted rate. How does one group get 100% discount and another group get 50%, and how is that decided, and what merits are used for determining that? I didn't have any good explanations of that.
Any questions for Mr. McCool?
I just wanted to ask, so the pricing that you have, like for trash can, garbage bags, that's part of the service and not the the product, or both?
It's the cost of, pretty much the labor cost to deploy those and bring those back in.
But if the people bring their own bags, is that okay?
Yes, but we change those bags on a daily basis during the big events, sometimes twice a day.
They'd have to do that.
I mean, you have to understand that every festival is a little bit different. It goes down to the Memorial Day Parade, the amount of barricades that we put out. You know, it takes us maybe an hour to load up barricades, go out and set them in place. The police officers, the day of the parade, will move them out on the street, close the street. We'll pull those back off. We go pick them back up the following workday. The total cost of that event is, you know, $80 or something when you use this form. Then you get up into Forest Festival where you might be talking $6,000–7,000.
But all along, we've been absorbing those costs, correct?
Yeah, and I won't speak for the police and fire, but for Public Works, that's just a part of what we do.
Right.
And we've always absorbed those costs and just planned for the events. I think specifically the big events, when you look at the amount of people that come to town, the amount of opportunities in entertainment that the public has and residents, I don't have an issue with supporting the services like that. And I've spent a lot of time with the big events and try to plan ahead. You know, I meet with Diana every year and we go through our list of things that they request and the new things. So we try to keep that updated, do the same thing with Sleigh Bell. And by working closer with them and planning ahead, we've been able to reduce the amount of overtime it takes for us to do this stuff so that we can start planning and getting stuff out, you know, a week ahead of time if we need to. And it reduces the amount of overtime and extra expense that we have. During those festivals, there's holidays where we don't have people working or weekends, and we just plan on cleaning bathrooms, you know, more rotations, changing garbages every day, things like that. But as far as setup and takedown, I think we've been able to optimize the efficiency of that.
Meeting with Tom and all the other groups, you haven't been able to get together on it?
What's that?
Meeting with the other little groups that have the different festivals. There's no way we can get together on that?
On the smaller ones, it's usually not that big of an issue. The smaller ones, it's usually parades and stuff, you know, stuff like that. It's setting up barricades, paint the town pink, may close a block, and it's just barricades. There may be Strut Your Mutt that wants a few picnic tables set out. So there's quite a bit smaller.
If we go with this process, I think that we would have to really define the costs for like non-benefit or nonprofit, or for-profit. Are they charging? Are they free? Because that's where you're gonna get the, okay, well, we're gonna charge this group this much, and then this group the next, different.
It's way a lot
The
into-
DDA budget, they reimburse us for services that the DPW provides for them downtown. And I think that's around $18,000 a year.
Not quite. The DDA the DDA reimburses the city for the landscaping services, which is $18,000 per year.
Okay,
The city, the Public Works used to decorate the downtown, and then there was a time where the DDA took that back and contracted out, then came back to the city and asked the city to do that again. And the city created an estimate of those services and will bill back the DDA. But the estimate of services was $8,000 and the DDA paid $5,000. What we've been doing the last few years, and we've gotten better at it, is we've taken a lot of the out-of-pocket expenses and had the DDA pay for those directly so that it's not run through the Public Works. So an example is the garland that gets hung up downtown and on the bridges.
You give them the bill for the garland then?
They order it, and then it just gets delivered to us. Same thing with the bows and the ribbons. They purchase those and then just deliver them to us. We install them. So the only thing that I've been tracking the last few years is the labor to put up and take down. And then there's expenses like purchasing light bulbs or strings of lights, and then the expenses for moving the traffic signals and stuff. So it's never 100% reimbursable, but everything that we do for the parade and that weekend itself is in addition and would be covered under this, potentially. There's never been any reimbursement for that.
Since we just had a sleigh bell parade,
Mm-hmm.
and you've been filling these sheets out just to kind of get an idea, what were the costs for that?
I think that one is sleigh bill, isn't it?
But it didn't have the police costs on it.
Do you remember what what's that?
It's a couple hundred.
For sleigh bell?
So if you can go back up a little bit, Laura, to the. I don't think we had I don't think you tallied it up.
We were at 440. 440, then
About $2,000 there.
Carried that.
60, 620.
Oh, Jim.
And there was, like I said, there was some things that were added, but there's probably $2,000 to $3,000 of expense.
Anybody else have questions? Thank you, Joe. I would like to hear from Mr. Saylor, municipal spending rules.
Yes.
How would this apply?
And I've sent to council in the past memos on that, and I probably should repeat that and send it again, since we have a new council person, and maybe some of you forgot what my opinion was on some of that. Expending public money is something that municipalities need to be very careful about. By statute, there are certain events or times of year that it is acceptable for a municipality to expend public money for those types of events. Memorial Day, for instance. The Independence Day is one described. Now, whether Independence Day covers something that goes over several days and we call the Forest Festival, that might be a different issue. But there are certain events, certain days that the government has said, municipality, you can expend public funds to assist in that event. Other types of events, without that type of authority, as certainly a technical matter, there is no authorization for a city to expend money for that purpose. Now, some municipalities take the position that where your money is being expended to promote the community and promote what's going on in the community, that should be an appropriate expenditure. There's not a lot of litigation or case law that I can point council to on that, but I think most authors that provide some authoritative writing on the topic would suggest that outside of those events and those days that by statute we're allowed to expend money, that expending public money for purposes is not authorized.
So if we were to approve something and we were not to charge somebody and we're spending tax dollars, we would have to treat each one individually, or is that across the board?
Well, those events that by statute were authorized, those are separate issues. But if it's not specifically authorized by statute, then the appropriate thing would be to have some method to recover those funds.
So like the sleigh bell, would that be?
Yeah, the sleigh bell would be one that I would say is not covered by some statutory authorization.
So we'd have to somewhat charge.
Yeah.
But we could go on the fact that it is promoting our town. and that's-
It is.
It's-
And I'll tell you that many communities will take that position that,
And this is a good in services, is providing these type of events.
yes. All I can tell you is that by the specific reading of case law and legislation, that there's no authorization for that.
There is a court case that I've gathered a bunch of information on municipal expenditures, and there was a court case, and again, it's probably 70 years old, but it's at least cited, and it was the city of Kalamazoo against versus Hayes. But basically, as the city attorney said, it's got to serve a public purpose when you expend public dollars. And in this case, they said generally a public purpose has for its objective the promotion of the public health, safety, morals, general welfare, security, prosperity, and contentment of all the inhabitants or residents within the municipal corporation, sovereign powers of which are used to promote such public purpose. And then the right of the public to receive and enjoy the benefits of the use determines whether the use is public or private.
And
So the
even
way
when-
I read that it's a public purpose for the contentment and enjoyment. And so, as city attorney says, a lot of communities take that stance that it's good for the community, everybody can take part in it and benefit from it, so it is serves a public purpose, but it's outside of what the statutes say are allowed.
I think one of the important parts of that municipal spending rule is that at the end of the day, even if you meet all the requirements, it is value. It has to show some value to the taxpayer of the municipality. It has to show a value. And correct me if I'm wrong, but,
I think that's a fair statement, yes.
so I guess, I don't know. When I called Ludington, I called Ludington and talked with them about their, how they charge. They charge nonprofit differently than they charge for-profit. It's actually half. They don't charge for parades. And in the conversation, I kind of got the drift that they did charge something because of that, because of the municipal spending law. They did charge a little bit to get something back. I don't know.
I think it's fair to say that's why that was instituted, is to address the same thing that you're talking about, recovering some of those funds that the municipality is expending for those types of events.
One of the other things that I got from the conversation and noted was that event planners have a tendency to plan to plan really big, and they ask for a lot of things, and once they had to start paying a little bit for those services, the request got a lot smaller. In other words, they asked for 20 picnic tables and only 10 would be used, that type of thing. They found that got a lot smaller. The other thing that they told me was that the stuff that they use, the barricades and that type of stuff, wear out faster when you're using them for events. Maybe they have a lot more events than we do. That was another one of the reasons. But it was a 2-year process for them to come to a decision on this matter. It wasn't anything that was done really quick. It was a lot of talk. They did not lose. They lost one event, I was told. Other than that, nobody was unhappy, I guess.
I know Jeff has worked with a lot of the special events to try to minimize the cost, and examples would be that barricades, his employees might, I call them spot them in advance of the event, put them on a street corner, and then volunteers would set them up, or the police officers would bring them out. I think I'm correct in saying that one of the music festivals, the volunteers put up their own fence, where, DPW's done it in the past. And so I know Jeff has tried to work with the events to minimize our costs in providing services. So, that is going on.
And as far as our public safety, they're there anyway. They don't charge for public safety like for their parades and stuff. They don't have any problem. Wellington does it, and that makes sense to me. It's just something that we do on a daily basis. I may get some static from Tim on that, but that's just something you do and you just plan for. I personally want to follow the municipal spending rules. I think that's my obligation as a council person, to only do what is legal and right with the tax dollars. That's just my opinion. And how we come to that, or how we agree to that, I don't know. I find it hard to support something that's not legal. If it's not legal, I don't want to do it.
I think
Ma'am?
we should add on here that, you know, there is, I know you're doing it already, but to have, well, if we can drop stuff off and have volunteers put it up so that there's an understanding that that's an option.
Yeah, and that's part of the conversation that they have, Jeff has with the event organizers, that we can do these things, you know, during our normal work hours. And,
Have it on here so people like, you know, you give this to someone and it's like, well, why, you know, you have all these questions, why don't you have it on here and say you guys can put it up yourselves too? These are just, it's the cost to put them up.
We had that, Thad used the example of the Labor Fest, and we did talk with that volunteer group beforehand, and I filled out the form as if we were to fill out or install all the fencing. And they instead, we delivered the fencing, they installed it and took it down themselves. So just like Thad said, we were having those conversations with each event.
and it's hard to determine the costs until Jeff and Tim sit down with the event organizers to see what they really need.
And that's why we asked for the extension of the 90 days, so that we could have time to work with them and iron out those details.
So you're planning on having, where you can sit down and talk to them and work this stuff out?
We've been doing that
We've
for
been doing that,
years.
yeah.
Okay.
For a
Even
lot of
before
years.
the forms were filled out, we always do that.
Okay.
But it,
I don't want to see any events go away. I want to make sure that we're all, I also want to follow the municipal spending rules. And I think we need to sit down and figure out a way that we can have these events, have a minimal charge for these events, and the difference between profit and nonprofit, and how we can move forward to better our community. So I don't know how council would like to proceed with that. What do you want to do?
I almost want to see, instead of like breaking down every one, couldn't you charge by the hour? Like add up the time that you worked on this festival and charge by the hour.
well, that's what it shows, but it's just showing, you know, breaking it down even further that, you know, if you want barricades, it's gonna cost, you know, this is our labor costs to provide that for you.
Right, well,
You
So
got
it's-
hours on.
Yeah, the cumulative effect would be the same.
though. If you're charging per item here of the service, and then you're charging, so you're charging rental, basically.
It's not a rental, it's basically, that's our cost to provide that to you. So if we have to bring picnic tables from one location to another, it's the cost of bringing those over there.
Then what's the cost of the per hour then? I mean, what's the per hour fee?
Higher.
That changes year to year, but that's based on the state of Michigan hourly rates that they give us. So an employee, I believe, is like $25 an hour for Public Works. The vehicle, the truck may be $10 or $50. But Thad's correct. So the picnic table costs, as an example, are if you needed 5 picnic tables delivered to down by the fountain, it's for us to go pick those up, deliver them, pick them back up, and put them back. It's just the time element, and that's how those were broken down for each of those items.
Now, can a certain organization just go get the picnic tables and haul them?
I would not support that.
No. Could they?
Why would you not support that?
Because there was a trend years ago where the public was doing that, and there was no control and no way of determining who was using picnic tables and taking them home and throwing a graduation party, or there was a lot of that going on. And there was a lot of these materials that used to get delivered to private enterprises for gatherings and stuff like that. So we don't do that anymore. We only support the events that are requested and approved by city council.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Why can't they go pick up their own picnic tables and deliver them? Or they're still gonna get charged?
Pick up city picnic tables.
Yep, for the Forest Festival, or whatever. can they haul their own tables? Are we gonna charge them for the tables? If that's what happens.
I mean, you could have like a sign out, this is what I took, and then sign it back in. And then they would be liable for getting it back and if it's damaged.
It's something we can think about.
And then you're eliminating the service, like, I
And
just think we're charging twice. If we're not doing the rental, you're charging for the service of one thing, but also service again per hour.
I'm not in favor of charging them at all, so.
No, I know I'm not,
No.
I know I'm directing it to you, but I'm not.
No, we're only charging them once. It's just reflective of our personnel cost or our equipment costs to provide that service.
It's almost like a depreciation of the usage, or if it's gonna be,
Those costs that are up on the screen represent the labor expenses to provide the materials that are requested.
So if it, and, you know, as an example, if Jeff said it takes 2 people an hour to deliver picnic tables, then that's, you know, he breaks it down, you know, if he can deliver 10 picnic tables in an hour, then that's where we get our per picnic table cost. Then if he has to throw in the cost of a truck to haul them and a trailer to haul them on, that all goes into it. So it just reflects our equipment and labor costs to provide these different.
We actually sat down and went through all the events in 2017 and the hours that it took to support those events and the materials that they did, and we kind of made an average of, just like Ed said, I mean, to deliver 1 barricade costs the same as delivering 10, so we averaged those out to come up with those costs, and we rounded down where we could.
cause I'm almost thinking like, okay, like you said, it costs the same for 1 to 10. Couldn't you just charge by the vehicle that it
A
was hauled
flat
in?
fee,
Yeah,
charge a flat fee.
and the mileage, rather than, you're almost charging by space.
Mr. Taylor,
To account for, what we tried to do is come up with a system that could be applied to all 20 different events easily and simply. None of them are the same, none of them want the same materials in the same place, the same quantity. So we came up with a system that was the easiest for us to administer and try to do it the easiest for each of those events to understand and be able to fill out. If you need 1 picnic table, fill out 1. If you needed 6 extra trash cans, put 6. If you give me a map and say you want this area fenced in, I can calculate what the footage is and we can apply that. But if we have to start tracking hours for all the staff like that, gets very,
But isn't that what you've been doing?
we do it after the fact, yeah. And we've been doing it to be able to track to support the request of council to determine what each of these events were costing, yeah.
Mr. Taylor, what were you hoping to accomplish tonight by this?
Well, first of all, I was wanting to determine if council is still interested in charging, so we can give these event sponsors some clarity on whether they're gonna be charged or not.
I hear Mr. Saylor correctly, we're in a gray area here. for
We
this
are,
thing.
and I don't think there's a definitively right answer or a definitively wrong answer on, and I think that city attorney and I disagree a little bit on that. But what is council inclined to do? To charge where we can charge, you know, for those events that aren't specifically authorized by a statute? Do you want us to charge for those?
I think we need some time. I don't think there's gonna be any consensus tonight. I could be wrong. I would like to have council have a chance to think about it. There's nothing, we have to start this right today and start charging, is there?
No, we don't have to.
Well, I think we need to make a decision for at least one event, because they need to get their paperwork out this week. And that would be the Arts and Crafts Fair. Are we gonna charge the arts and crafts, or aren't we? That's, the problem is, everyone here in this group is facing a deadline. whether or not they're going to have their event or not, based on the pricing, because some of these prices will determine that they won't go forward.
I would assume that,
That's my concern, is that we can't push it off for another month. Or we just say, until we make a determination, there isn't going to be any fees, and move forward that way, but
I believe that's the way it is right now, isn't it?
The way
Council makes a decision, there is no
Yep.
charge.
staff has no authority to charge.
And I would assume that council and staff would give adequate notice and timely notice to people in the future if they were going to pay, until council makes a decision.
Right, the staff can take another swing at this form and try to provide some more information for council. I've got a couple of ideas that might be, the council might be interested in, and we can discuss in a future date. But I guess from what I'm hearing for right now is that until further notice, we're not charging.
Until further notice, we're not
Okay.
charging.
Put like a deadline, like for the next at least for the next 6 months of, events, there's no charge.
But
Until,
I
Horse
would,
Festival is in,
I would think that once we make a decision, that we would at least give people a year to get into the swing of it. I would not want to put anybody between a rock and a hard place.
So, based on that comment, are we gonna go on the premises that we're not gonna charge for 2019? And if you wanna charge, start in 2020?
I don't wanna charge at all, so.
I don't either. I think that for the small gain, if nothing else, if it's just a dollar amount, we have a registration fee. You have a $50 registration fee, so you can say that there was something for a nonprofit to be able to hold an event. But first of all, trying to determine who gets 25, 50, 75, and 100%, I don't know how you would do that. Which group is more worthy of a 100% discount than the other? Because almost everyone that does our special events in this community is a nonprofit. And in almost all cases, 100% of the revenues garnered from whatever those events are goes back to our community. So there's really, we're stealing from ourselves to charge a fee that is anything more than nominal enough to just be able to say, well, yeah, we have a fee. Well, it really doesn't cost that much, and it is for the good of the order, and it is for the goodwill of the people that we do these things. And if I'm not mistaken, every event has to come to city council to get approved. So at that point, we determine whether or not if it's good for the order, right? And then we give them permission to do the event, and if we don't think it's for the good of the order, then we say deny. Right?
we
I have
deny
a quick
that-
question.
Deny that.
But they're all good,
Right, that's what I'm saying. So that's my point. They're all for the good of the order, for the most part.
I have a quick question for Jeff. Did you happen to track what the Arts and Crafts event during the Forest Festival actually costs?
Not specifically, because
Had to take a guess? I mean,
we could fill out the form right now.
just to give them a
We
ballpark
provide
worst
them-
scenario.
Yeah, we set up extra trash cans, we provide extra picnic tables in there. We set up special handicap signage.
All our costs are all on duty with our personnel that were there working the handicap parking and no parking areas, so we didn't incur anything over and above.
Over time, we've rolled it with the overall Forest Festival, so we've just added that in with all the other events, and I haven't broken that out to each of those specific 40 events.
That would be helpful to have an idea ballpark.
I would suggest that one thing we don't wanna lose in discussion, and Thad brought it up in the beginning, is we made a change from 30 to 90. If there's anything that we can hopefully decide or say we want, it helps both of us, is the planning of it, that these need to be in. We need to have them in 3 months prior, because it's a dickens for us when it's short notice. Especially me trying to track down insurance forms when there isn't any, so if there's anything that we can move forward on, is changing that so we can get that notification.
And that's, yeah, and I agree with the chief, and that's the one thing when I sent out the letter that I assured him is that we were definitely gonna need it 90 days in advance. The only thing that was undecided was the cost. So they've all been put on notice that they need it 90 days in advance. But we can go with no charges until we have further discussions with council and determine what you want to do.
I wonder if we get in depth a little bit more on our municipal spending rules too, and figure out exactly where we're at. We don't want to get ourselves between a rock and a hard place and have somebody,
Well, let me
An issue
update
out
what
of it.
we've prepared in the past, and I'll get something to everybody on council on that.
I'm not against events, and I think we need to figure out a way that we can have these events and meet all the obligations to all the taxpayers.
Okay, we'll schedule this for a future work session and come back with some new ideas and some new information and let council have some time to discuss. Is that,
This is-
So we're gonna do it
Appropriate.
within the 90 days then, or
excuse me?
do it within the 90 days?
Well, we're just, right now, we're requiring that they provide us the event form 90 days in advance, and we're not gonna charge until council tells us they wanna charge or they don't wanna charge. So right now, we're not,
Would it be possible for staff to check, I checked with Luddington, would it be possible for staff to find other communities that charge and maybe why they do and what they charge?
we can, yeah,
That would be great,
okay.
have that information.
To be clear, though, if you're gonna have event in 2019, you're okay. You're not gonna be charged,
That's council's decision.
so that everybody knows that's.
Well, we can't make a decision tonight.
Well,
but
no, I
what's
mean,
the
if
consensus?
that's what I'm hearing from council, you don't wanna charge
Right,
Right.
in this year.
right.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Pretty much.
Okay,
Okay.
that'll help. Thank
Anybody
you.
else? Let's move on to C, discussion on deer call, our public safety director.
I was tasked with looking at the possibility, this has been discussed numerous times in the past prior to that I took over as director, so, decided to look at it again, and one of the first things, we had to do is, according to the USDA, was to try to get some permission if there was gonna have that happen, and that's what we were having issues with prior. The golf course, over on Cherry Street did give permission if there was to be a cull, so then what, the USDA biologist came in to start looking at the area, and he spent a full day here, spent some time with Sergeant Bruce. I will tell you that this doesn't come without a cost for the USDA to do this. This is something that we as a police department cannot do, which I think has been brought up numerous times in the past, that our insurance company will not condone us doing that, will not cover us doing that, so. The areas that we would do it in would all have to be permission granted. They said they can even go into neighborhoods if there is permission. I'm a little bit leery of that, going into, our neighborhoods and trying to take care of deer. He did map out an area which is pretty much Cherry Street, south of there, and a little bit to the west of there, back in by the wells, by the high school. The factors that we looked at is how many deer can you take out at any one time? Yes, we could have 40 deer sitting there, but once you start plucking away, you're gonna wind up having them scurry, so. He made an estimation for us that would have cost around for four of the USDA employees for three nights in Manistee would cost around 10 grand for them to take care of, at a minimum of about 20 deer. I said, well, what happens if we go above 20 deer? He says, well, that might be hard just because of once you start taking care of it. It has to start going into more nights, which is gonna wind up costing more money, because we're paying for their travel, we're paying for their lodging. I know that council member Szymanski, we have talked in the past about tranquilizing moving in, if there is a gentleman to do that. I also talked to them about that. That is actually illegal per DNR. They don't allow for transplanting of deer. So if it's been done in the past, it's not supposed to happen. And the biggest thing about that is, especially with the wasting disease now with deer, they said they just can't be mixing, especially with domestic and wild deer. So that option would be not something that we could pursue. So what I did is I approached city manager. I said, this is what we have right now. I wanted to get council's direction before we moved further and spend more man hours in trying to get more sites and trying to plan forward for this, to see if this is something that council wanted to do.
I'm in favor of it.
Me too.
I am too.
I'm tired of hearing about deer. Excuse me. Tired of hearing about the deer.
It's not gonna go away. It's only gonna get worse. They're only gonna multiply. And we've created a haven where they have no predators, and the deer population gets larger and larger and larger, so we've got to make a stand and a start somewhere.
The biggest thing is, I think that in last year's budget, we didn't discuss this as being part of, my budget, the city's budget. This would be something we'll have to talk about, and this money, the 10 grants for the USDA to come in there and do this, I talked with him again today, the biologist. The deer would have to has to go to like a project for feeding the hungry, or, for a food bank and stuff like that. So now we either gotta get people to come and do the processing for free, and then for the companies to come in. So there still might be some additional costs on top of it. This is just the USDA cost that he gave me as an approximation. We haven't signed any contracts or anything like that, but they're willing to come in and do it, especially since we have the permission.
And does it have to be USDA to do the culling?
USDA does it, DNR permits it.
Is there any private companies that are licensed to be able to do it as
Yeah,
well?
there's one out of,
It may be less expensive.
out east, it's called White Buffalo. I've talked with them in the past. They're actually doing the call in Ann Arbor right now. In fact, they started January 1st culling deer in Ann Arbor.
The biggest thing we gotta look at there, again, is liability when you have a government entity taking care of this. You have to look at those type of things.
Sure.
I do not know with a private organization about the city's liability with that. We would have to look into that to see.
Well, White Buffalo's doing it, but their bill is almost $400,000, over $400,000 right now in Ann Arbor to cull deer, so I don't think we're gonna get to that point. The $10,000, Mr. Taylor, Mr. Bradford, if we decide to do this, where will we get the money?
My immediate reaction at this time is fund balance, and unless our fiscal year budget comes in less than expected and we could absorb those costs. But I think right now, we're halfway through our budget. I don't know where we might come up with that 10,000. Things might change in the next six months. And if it does, fine. If not, we'd have to take out of fund balance.
Can our fund balance handle it?
Yes.
Could we get I know like Lighthouse Park had a group that helped fund it. Could we get a group together that said deer calling and raise money that way?
Anything's possible if people wanted to donate it.
Because I think if this is such a big problem too, and that they want this done, that could be another option of where's the money gonna come from?
Just to remind council, this is not gonna be a 2019 project. This is, USDA recommends several years. We can't just do it once. To do it next year, you're gonna have to do it the year after. And we're gonna have to keep working on trying to get more property owners to allow it to happen, so they can have, the cost is because of the numerous shooters in the different areas, so you can take out more deer. That's what the cost is gonna be incurred, majority of it from.
And we have
Could we get permission from the property owner?
All we have right now is from the golf course.
So, but the south and west sides of,
The south side is city property, over there by the wells, which is a small area, by the school. That's the only areas that we're thinking about right now, other than what areas would have to ask for property owners. I can tell you that the property owners south of town there, they actually hunt their own land, and I don't know how they would like if we came on their land to hunt the deer that they're trying to take out themselves.
I know it can be done. They're doing it downstate. They're doing it in residential areas. Ann Arbor recently suspended, I don't know how they did this, they suspended the 450-foot rule for firing a gun. They get the permission of the landowner they're going to hunt on, the property owner, and the neighbor. And other than that, they don't care. They just go in and take.
USDA says they could do that too. They could go right into some of our residential areas and with the permission.
Yeah.
Takes-
And I think that's almost what's needed in some of our areas up there. I just think that's where it needs to be done. Some of those little wooded areas.
Would they be able to use a bow instead of a rifle as well? Do they have any
We didn't talk
technique?
specifics about that. I thought it was, they were all talking small caliber.
this might be a stupid question, but does it have to fall into what time of the season it is? Like if
Yes.
it's a, okay, so.
This is the time of year that you're having to have your best luck for
If
it.
you're asking, does it have to be in a defined hunting season? It doesn't.
So you can use a bow right now?
You could use a bow, you could use a firearm. I would recommend you use a firearm, because with a bow, I mean, they're gonna run, and the last thing you want is some deer laying on somebody's front porch.
I think there is a period of time where they will not issue the permits anymore. Later in the season, after the does become pregnant, they just, for some reason, they want to issue them later in the winter.
In talking to the DNR, he believes he can just, look at what we had in the past and just use the same wording, and there'll be any issues of permitting.
But do we have to have it done by a certain time?
That I do not know, but I can find out.
Yeah, I
they're-
don't think they'll let you do it in May or do it, I think it has to be the winter month.
That if the council's direction, I could work with him, we could be looking at within the next month of them coming here.
What does everybody feel?
I would like to see it happen.
I would too. I actually think you could get people to sponsor the processing of the deer for, since it's gonna be given away to the food pantries. I would be happy to sponsor the cost of
There's a guy.
harvesting a deer.
I didn't interrupt, but there's a guy in the city who processes deer, Al Cole.
Right.
And, that's, I'm
I think-
sure, I'd be willing, I know we pay charge $55, I'll buy the tags and
I think we could work.
process. You know what I mean?
think-
That's my understanding.
Yeah, I think we can work with the media to get the message out there that it's an opportunity if that's the way somebody wants to give back to the community, they could sponsor the processing of a deer. We can talk with United Way to see what resources they have where they could, if maybe they had some funding to process some deer and then donate it to a food pantry. I think there's some options for that.
I think though that, if we can get more of the donations coming in for this process would be more, instead of the city paying for it. I personally I moved here because of the deer.
Yeah.
I came from a big San Diego city, and I understand the dangers and all that, but I think I moved up to northern Michigan because there's deer. So I would be against using the city taxpayers for that.
I think it's important that we manage our herd. We manage it every year in the state. We call it deer season. It's actually a big deer call, and that's how we manage our herd. We don't do it in our cities, and I think we need to do that. We need to manage our herd.
Council, I'd just like to mention one thing, and I think Chief mentioned it, is this is not a one-year process, it's a multi-year process, so
I understand that.
it's not 3, it's not 5, it's not 7, so you're really looking, if it's 10 grand a year, up $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 expenditure over time, which is significant and could fund other things if, depending on council's priorities.
Seems to be a priority.
What I read is you get through the first couple of years of a deer call, then you can maybe do it every other year. But it's that first couple of years and the rebound effect. They have a tendency to bounce back and have a lot more twins and even have triplets. They bounce back pretty quickly. But anyway, that's beside the point. Anybody have anything else? And the consensus, what's the consensus here?
Do it. Do it.
Do it.
We'll make it happen.
Okay. Anything else on that? Okay. D, discussion on provisioning centers. Mayor Pro Tem.
Why, thank you, Mayor Zelinski. I've been thinking a lot about this. Well, I do think the passage of the proposal on allowing recreational marijuana does dramatically change our landscape, and it dramatically changes people's perception of marijuana. Let's face it, it's here. You can grow 12 plants if you want to at home for your own personal consumption. If you're out in public and you walk by somebody who may have already had, a marijuana cigarette, you're gonna smell it. It's gonna be part of society. And I think we have to maybe think about the possible economic impact that could have. One of the things that I've always admired about Manistee County is that we're really good at growing things. We grow asparagus, peas, lettuce, strawberries, apples, apricots, cherries, peaches, plums, tomatoes, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, corn, squash, pumpkin. We have a vineyard, it's called Douglas Valley. We have iron fish, we're producing whiskey. We have a brewery. We're really good at not just producing all of these things, but we're good at making them into other items that can be consumed. And that's something we should be proud of, and we've always have been proud of it because we have generations of farmers who have lived here. I think that's a real plus for our community. We do not currently have any townships that are zoned for growing a crop such as marijuana. But I want to bring up the fact that the farmers in this area, they don't just produce enough to feed everybody in Manistee County. They're selling product outside of Manistee County. So they're not encumbered, nor do they find the lack of a freeway here a problem in distribution. So they've managed to do this on a very professional level for many, many years. We could do that with any crop. And I think that's an important point. It could be an important marketing point if you really think about it. I came from downstate, and I came from Oxford, Michigan, which is right next to Lake Orion. In October of this, just a few months ago in October, Lake Orion in a Lake Orion Township opened up an industrial park where they opened up what's going to be a 288,000 square foot facilities to do specifically handle the 4 licenses that the city has already granted by ordinance. It does not include a provisioning center. But what's unique about this setup is somebody had the bright idea that we can get a lot of different growers who have their own LLCs, their own companies, and they can rent space in this facility that they're going to build. They're actually building 3 buildings. 288,000 square feet is the equivalent of 6.5 acres under enclosed environment that's secure, that's protected. It's a $40 million project. They have a 75% commitment already on the rental space for the first building that's going up this year. This is an incredible opportunity for people. And I don't think we should close any doors of opportunity for economic development. And I think because marijuana is here, we need to think about this as a cash crop. Now, I can think of property out on 55 in our Renaissance zone that we own, that the city owns, that's in the township. My personal opinion is we should work with the township to see if they would allow some zoning to allow the cultivation of marijuana in a facility out there. It would be maybe a good marketing strategy for the county, and it would be good for the city of Manistee. It would be good for employment. And it's very close to the prison. We've got I think we have a Michigan State Police post out there, and it's right on 55. That's just, to me, strikes me as a golden opportunity because not only do we have the property available, but we know how to grow things here, which I think is kind of important. A couple other things, just one other thing that I want to touch on is what Traverse City is doing. Traverse City really didn't have any legal, provisioning centers or any kind of retail outlet for marijuana. They didn't really pass law or pass their ordinance until December 3rd of 2018, which was a little less than a month ago. They're allowing all 5 licenses within Traverse City in properly zoned areas. They have no cap on the first 4, which mirrors the same 4 that we have for medical marijuana. They're going to allow for 13 dispensaries in Traverse City for provisioning centers. And what they're going to do with that is they know there's going to be a demand for it. They're going to accept applications through May 3rd, which will give enough time for any interested business owners to apply for these licenses, and they're going to use a lottery system based on qualified applicants to determine who gets them, because that's how much demand they see. We already have people who have explored options and have talked to the city about medical marijuana. One of the things that Traverse City did also on December 3rd was they opted in all the way for medical marijuana for all of the licenses, and they opted out of the recreational marijuana because they too want to take a seat back and see how things develop with the licensing with Laura. So I think that was a good strategy. And I think it's just time to maybe revisit whether we want to see a provisioning center in the city of Manistee.
If council would like, I brought the PowerPoint that Denise and I shared with council in 2018 to talk about provisioning centers. If you'd like, I can run through that again. I know there's at least one council member that hasn't seen it. It
Sure.
might help refresh your memory.
Sure.
Okay. Okay,
Do you want to do it?
yeah.
It's the down button.
So if council is interested in a provisioning center, we already have the ordinance for the medical marijuana, so we just have to amend that. And that would require the city attorney to draft the ordinance amendment. We'd have to establish some standards and establish a number of permits. And then we'd have to develop an application form, which none of those are really time consuming because we've already have an application form for the other 4 types of permits. So we'd have to make these amendments to different parts of our ordinance, which again is not a big issue. We would have to have a definition for provisioning centers. Denise provided this before she retired. And we would have to amend the use table in the zoning map. And where we were looking at it would be in the regional commercial zone or district in our zoning. And if you look, I'm not good on colors. What color would you call that, George?
To the north of the,
North of it.
that's blue to me.
And it's not a blue, it's kind of a, I don't know. You got a pointer on this?
Purple.
There. It'd be this area,
C1 is this pink color,
Some sort of pink.
that area,
right there.
and then also this is the same zoning. But we ruled this out because of its proximity to Manistee Catholic Central. So this area is roughly from about where the north side bar is up to the north city limits, and on that side of Cypress Street 31. And what we were looking at in recommending that was a couple of reasons. Number one, it's that regional commercial district. It's heavily trafficked area, heavily or highly visible area. We have all kinds of law enforcement departments traveling through there, and it's highly visible, and it's already a commercial zone. So we felt that that would be a good way or a good location for it. Plus, there's a number of vacant properties or properties for sale. It's an underutilized commercial zone. We felt that that would be a good location to provide maybe a little lift and get some more business there if council was interested in that. So that's the area we were looking at. I guess that's the end of it. The other one, as we said, was way down below, but we don't want to go there. It's off at Key Segment Street, so that gives you a little bit better look at where that location is. Again, this is the reasons that we wouldn't want it down in the southern part of the community in that same commercial zone. So that just eliminates all that because of the proximity to the schools. So we would just have to add some language to our ordinances, which is not a big deal. And we would approach it the same way with the other licenses or permits that we authorize. They have to be licensed by the state, they gotta be in compliance with all state laws, they gotta be in compliance with our ordinances. So we have the framework in place. So it would have the same regulations as the growers, processors, safety compliance, facility, and secure transporter. And we can also institute other regulations. We can provide for buffer zones. So basically, if council is interested in allowing a provisioning center which deals specifically with medical marijuana, we could move forward at council's direction to develop the ordinance language, draft the amendments to the chapter 866 medical marijuana, draft the zoning language that we need, and then put it through the process. So that's how we would do it. And we also suggested some inputs, public input, just to see how the community feels about it. Now, that was before there was the vote on recreational marijuana, and I think we have a pretty good handle now on how the community feels on it, because as I recall, it was 58% in favor of the recreational marijuana. So I don't know that this is as appropriate as it would have been before that vote. So that was just talking about provisioning centers and medical marijuana. Now, if council is interested in the retail aspects of medical marijuana, the next question is council also interested in the retail for recreational marijuana? Because we could do, it would be the same similar process that we would go through for that, because we're already working on an ordinance to allow recreational marijuana in the community, and it wouldn't be that difficult to add provisions for a retailer, a recreational retailer. Now, on that topic, we had our staff met on Monday afternoon to start the process of working on what we need for this recreational marijuana ordinance with the sunset of April 1st, and getting into it and diving into it a little bit further. When I suggested April 1st sunset, I forgot to consider that we were going to have public hearings for the ordinance amendments. We have to do public notifications. So we don't think we can get it done by April 1st, and we're going to suggest that when this comes back to council for the first reading, when it comes back for the next presentation, that you deny it at that time and ask staff to change the sunset to July 1st. So we can take into consideration all the steps that I overlooked in the zoning amendment process. So that's it. That's in a nutshell. We have the structure in place to add provisioning center licenses through the city. We have a recommended location that is already zoned commercial, that is highly visible, on a well-traveled street that, various law enforcement agencies traverse, and it's already, there's already commerce going on in that location. So if council's interested in that, we can start moving down that path.
I'd be interested.
Same.
Are you interested in medical and recreation, or just medical?
That's where we're having, I mean, are we talking?
I think we're just talking medical,
Okay,
right now.
medical at this time?
And then still opting out of the recreational until we have a better grip on what ours.
Well,
Right, but we are opting out of recreational marijuana with a sunset of I'm recommending now July 1st.
Right.
So my assumption was that council wanted us to develop the process for recreational marijuana, but we really didn't discuss about the sale of recreational marijuana, much like we hadn't really embraced any discussion with the provisioning centers for medical marijuana. And if, do we want one, do we want none, or both of the retail opportunities?
I,
I would,
go ahead.
I would recommend that we go for all of them. Again, if we don't have any retail, then there is no revenue back to the state or to the city. From what I understand how it rules, you have to be able to have a retail in order to benefit from any income from the sale of marijuana, including medical marijuana. So it's all for naught if we don't follow up on the second. Because I believe that the way the rule after this year, even proceeds from medical marijuana goes into the kitty, into the single fund kitty.
Yeah,
And we would get, like I said, we'd have all these businesses and we get zero financial benefit unless we have the retail.
And we'll get clarification on that. I don't know if you have to offer them all, but I think you have to participate in both recreational and medical to some degree.
Right.
Yeah.
But I thought there was a caveat that you had to actually have a retail.
I don't know. That's why I say we'll have to look for that for clarification.
Do we have any information from any other cities, states, or the sales and grow of the facts either way? Do you have anybody, Chief Gozel, you, anybody?
Just in,
Sales of marijuana, the legalized marijuana from other states.
do you have anything, Tim, that you can offer?
I have a lot of data that I could bring forward about, how the other states have, when they've legalized marijuana for recreational consumption, possession, sales. I could bring forward, what they encumbered over their years after they wound up legalizing it. Just bring it for council's information if you'd like.
I think that's, something we have to look into. I mean, you're right, it's here. But I can't say I'm so excited about saying let's have municipal, we've already established recreational. Sorry, wife's a cop,
Right.
I was one of the 42%, I'll be honest with you.
So, Mr. Taylor, can we can work on medical marijuana and developing a provisioning ordinance for that. Can we work realistically on a recreational sales without really knowing what the rules are?
Well, we can, and that was our discussion, is that we could do a recreational marijuana ordinance that basically, just summarizing, says that you have to follow all the state rules. And then going into it knowing that when the rules are promulgated, then we would have to amend that ordinance. But at least it would be out there that we do have an ordinance, but qualified that it's going to have to be amended when the state issues their rules. So we could move forward that direction.
Okay. I just,
So we're moving forward on both the medical and the recreational for
What-
provisioning centers?
What I'm hearing is provisioning centers, and what we can do, we can move forward on the recreational, because it's going to take us a while. In the interim, we can ask the chief to present some information that Councilman Goodspeed requested.
So basically, we'll do nothing until we look at recreational, which Laura hasn't even developed all the rules and regulations, but they have developed all the rules and regulations for medical marijuana.
What,
I think that's what we should concentrate on first.
and that's what I said, we'll go forward with that for the provisioning, we'll move forward on that. But what I was saying is that we're right now working on a medical or a recreational marijuana ordinance that would have a sunset, that I'm now suggesting be July 1st. While we're working on that, Councilman Goodspeed wanted some other information about recreational marijuana sales, and we would provide that to him, but we'd still be working on the provisioning center.
Again, I'm not hearing that we're gonna do anything to change. Maybe I'm wrong. Is everybody here clear that we can have a provisioning center that provides for medical marijuana? We could do that now.
Once we make the adjustments to our amendments to our ordinance.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's what I'm telling you.
And I'm asking, because I don't know, you know, what the rules and regulations are coming out of Lansing are gonna be as far as recreational goes.
What,
We have to wait for the recreational.
we don't, what we're saying is because the state has not made their rules yet for recreational, and council wanted a recreational marijuana ordinance, that all we can do at this time is to say we are basically, that our ordinance is gonna say you have to follow the rules as promulgated by the state.
Okay, but
And then we'll have that on the books, and then when they promulgate the rules, we'll have to amend our ordinance to reflect those.
Or decide, if we don't like the rules, decide not to go.
Yeah,
it's a different, recreational and medical is different.
they are different.
So why are we counting on the recreational? Is that what you're trying to get at?
Yeah, that's what I was really trying to go for.
Well,
But,
okay, I
you know,
guess
it's-
I'm totally
it's a-
confused, because what I'm trying to communicate is that, what I'm hearing from council is you want language that would allow for a provisioning center for medical marijuana.
Yeah.
Yes,
And that's what I'm saying. We will work on that, okay?
okay.
To do that. And at the same time, we're going to be working on council's other request
Right.
for recreational marijuana ordinance. And what I'm suggesting is that we will include also recreational retail as part of that. Until
Oh.
we're told not to.
Okay.
But you're gonna have them separate ordinance, right?
They are gonna be separate ordinances.
Anything other?
I'm kind of looking at this whole thing, and everybody's looking at all the money everybody's gonna make, okay? I'm looking at it, what it's gonna cost for us when the drivers get hit with the marijuana in their system. We'll know that later, if we can get the results, or some other cities that have done this, or states that have done this. I'm worried about what your kids are gonna look like down the road.
Well, it's gonna be here, if everybody here who's over the age of 21 wants to grow 21 plants in their house right now, they can do it. They can give away product. You're gonna have people, it's an unfortunate consequence, and it's not a good one, I understand, but we can't stop them from using, since it's,
They've been that for maybe a year, that I know of.
Well, and that's part of the problem that some of the other states have had. If you don't have legal ways for people to obtain it, then they're gonna find other ways.
Well, if they wanna go to Huntington and get it, they're gonna get it.
Well, or somebody who's growing, has, again, it just creates some cottage industries that we probably don't want to have.
Yeah, well, but we're voting them in.
down the street walking your dog, and your neighbors are outside enjoying the nice weather, and they're also enjoying the benefits of smoking marijuana for their own pleasure, you're gonna smell it anyway. And I would love to be able to say that everybody in the world is smart enough not to drive under the influence, but I can't guarantee that either. Bringing the licensing here in a controlled environment at least gives us some more revenue to help with the consequences.
Okay, is there anything other? Do we have anything else we want to talk about? With that, we're adjourned.
Guess we get to work on moving forward, provisioning centers. And that's gonna have to go, since that's gonna go to the planning commission too, why wouldn't we do the recreational at the same time?
Well, we could, we can, what I was looking at was an ordinance for the recreational that allows for it.
makes sense.
And then if they don't like it, they can tell us
They
they
don't, and at the same time have the amendment for producer centers and the zoning ordinance as well.
make all the amendments at once.
Yeah.
I thought that's what I was trying to get across to them, but they were, I don't know,